Hi, everybody. Welcome to Hot Mike. I'm your co-host, Bill Whittle. Hot Mike can't be here today. He's out doing a shoot for Harley Davidson. Hot Mike doesn't know how to ride a motorcycle. In fact, when we put him on the saddle, he was facing the wrong way. So that's showbiz. We expect to have him back by the end of the week. Well, it's been 4 years as I record this on January 6th since the J-6 event, and it's been called an insurrection by the left pretty much every day for the last 4 years. I'm not going to rehash that whole situation for you other than to make the one salient point, and that's simply this. What happened on January 6th of 2021 was a demonstration, not an insurrection, and the reason you can know that it wasn't an insurrection is because the people who have guns, in case we need to have an insurrection, didn't bring their guns. And that's about all the evidence you need to put that particular theory to rest. It's amazing to me how the left manages to keep missing this one salient point. In fact, the only person who was killed on January 6th was not somebody at the result of this giant army of insurrectionists, but rather an unarmed woman who was shot at point-blank range from across a barricade by a police officer with a history of disciplinary problems. Now, it seems pretty clear to me at this point, I think to many of the rest of us too, that January 6th was a provocation. It's not unlike the FBI to do these kind of things to provoke groups into action. But the bottom line is, provocation or not, we fell for it, and it gave the left nothing but 4 years of ammunition to attack the general law and order theme of conservatives, which is not just a theme, it's basically our entire mantra. Was a catastrophe in terms of public relations, but it sure as hell wasn't what the left makes it out to be. And 4 years later, we are about ready to start remedying some of the horrendous atrocities that have occurred in the 4 years since January 6th. As we record this, we are exactly 2 weeks away from justice, not just for the January 6th political prisoners who've been locked up for 4 years, but for the people that locked them up as well. We'll be seeing pardons in 2 weeks when Donald Trump is inaugurated, I believe, right on the first day, probably the second he steps down from the podium. We'll not only be seeing pardons of the people who are innocent, we're going to start seeing investigations of the people who are guilty. I'm looking forward to that in a very, very big way. So it's been 2 months and a day since Donald Trump was reelected. And the world has changed so dramatically since then that it's actually almost impossible to remember just how miserable, how absolutely miserable it was in the first days of January 2021. Let's take a little walk down memory lane, shall we? It's not a pretty walk, but the nice thing about it is we do get to come out on the other side into the sunlight. So let's just have a quick look at some of the things we've learned in the 4 years since J6. Well, first of all, we learned that the unknown virus of unspecified origin actually did come from a Chinese virology lab. We learned that states that locked their populations down did worse than the states that didn't lock down their populations when it came to the COVID-19 pandemic. We learned that forcing children to wear masks has cost them 21 IQ points. You heard that correctly. The most recent studies shown that children born during the pandemic who were deprived of any sort of facial interaction with their parents, who were masked up at home, this kind of thing. We're seeing that many of these kids are showing an average IQ of 79. The pre-pandemic average IQ, by definition, is 100, but the kids who grew up with the pandemic are showing IQs of 79. 75 is functionally retarded. That damage that we've done, and that we knew we were doing, and that we knew had no effect whatsoever on the spread of the disease, is going to stay with us as a country for the next 80 years. We learned that printing trillions of dollars leads to high inflation. Some of us knew this already. We learned that the U.S. military is as incompetent at the top as it is lethal and skillful down at the bottom. We learned that going woke costs billions of dollars because everybody hates woke. Everybody hates woke. We learned that having one transgendered male athlete means that the best a woman can hope for is a silver, and having two means that her best case is a bronze. We learned that some politicians brag about being fired upon when they weren't, and others don't brag when they were. We learned that Hollywood is even sicker than we thought, and that was a particularly high bar to clear. We learned that neurotics and hysterics can make a ton of money in legacy media. We also learned that there is no more legacy media. We learned that women, Hispanics, blacks, and young people have had enough of this crap too. We learned that the elites in Germany, Italy, France, Argentina, and now Canada, because as we record this today, it's been announced that Justin Trudeau is resigning as Prime Minister of Canada. We've learned that those elites have learned the same lesson, or in the process of learning the same lesson, that American elites learned on November 5th of 2024, and that is that their time is up. And finally, we've learned that despite record inflation, keeping messages like this still only costs $9.95 a month by clicking on the link in the description below. We'll see you next time right here on Hot Mic.